to me, like, I look at, so much of this is just math. I mean, Chinese tariffs being higher, right? You're actually going to put a tax on the U.S. consumer. So they're going, in a challenging environment already, right? You're going to need to, at some point, raise prices. So I think that this is my concern overall in a, like you said, in a challenging environment, to then be faced with higher prices because of some of this kind of exogenous factors. That, I think, is going to potentially have an impact on the consumer and ultimately an impact on the overall sentiment.
Deb, talk to us about consumer trends in China. The consumer, he or she, incredibly important in China, right? Consumption is, they're just not getting that going. I mean, right now, exports, that's the best thing the Chinese economy has going for it, right? The consumer, maybe not so much because they've got a ton of worries, right? Roof over their head, whether their son or daughter is going to be able to get a job, et cetera. And with online retailers there especially, it seems to be almost a race to the bottom. Everybody wants to downgrade in terms of spending.
It's really interesting because we're hearing from, we just spent some time in Europe, from the luxury houses that they're actually still finding their strongest and best consumer is specifically in China. And they are redirecting a lot of their spend and efforts in that region. And we've actually seen, right, in the U.S. that spending there has been, a bit more challenging. And so I think it goes back to some of what we're seeing in the U.S., this idea of spending kind of, and when you think about it, luxury, right, a lot of that is there's value in a secondhand market. So that there is a change in terms of how consumers, I think, are looking at those products. But then I think these opening price points, it's very similar in terms of what we're seeing from the consumer behavior. And we actually run a weekly survey on the Chinese consumer and the U.S. consumer, how they're feeling, right, their state. It's not so different right now.
Secondhand luxury, interesting. So, I mean, a used Birkin is still a Birkin, in other words.
That's exactly right. And in many cases now, with a lot of the data, especially around AI from these different platforms, consumers know when they buy the good, the value that it will have in the secondhand market. So they're buying it almost from an investment perspective. And sometimes the secondhand market is higher than the firsthand market.
I'll be darned.
Deborah, you've written about the Ozempic economy, and I know that everyone from fast food to health foods are trying to get their arms around this. Is this yet another dietary fad, or just walk us through the winners and losers here?
It's really interesting. I mean, I think the losers right now have really been a lot of the companies who, right, I mean, we're seeing this almost a snacking crisis, if you will, right? And so consumers, for the most part, we can say upwards, high single digits who are utilizing, whether it's Ozempic or Wegovy or any of these other kind of, GLP-1 drugs. There's this idea, I think, now that there is control in the hands of consumers. There is almost this, it's really a change in sentiment that they actually can control things that they felt were previously out of their control. This past holiday season, many retailers said they didn't have the right sizes in stores, right? It's actually having that much of an impact. So we're definitely seeing kind of this movement towards smaller sizes. Secondly, we're seeing less snacking and a real change in terms of how consumers think about their opportunity to kind of control what was previously almost uncontrollable.
I'm not sure whether Ozempic or something similar is taking root in China or not, but I mean, what is happening though as a result of reopening after years of very, very sort of almost cruel lockdown in China is there's a huge fitness craze and explosion there. I mean, brands like, it's Canadian, but brands like Lululemon are just doing extremely good business in China.
It's unbelievable you brought that up. So what we're seeing, I was just at the big conference in Vegas, ICSC, International Council of Shopping Centers, and they were saying that, the traditional anchors, right, have somewhat flamed out, right? The department stores, which, may they rest in peace. But that the new anchors are like, OWN and Hoka and Vuori and right, all of these and Lulu and whatnot, all kind of coming together to really make up the volume of some of these anchors. So there's a real change. And I think, in China, right, there's, you're seeing all these running clubs and everything. There's this new fitness craze almost. And it really is, I think, not only great in terms of health, but also great in terms of product consumption.
Business, sales, indeed. Yeah, and these are standalone stores we're talking about here, not in a mall somewhere.
Both, actually.
Okay.
So they're both on mall and off mall. So that has also really changed, going back to like this volume of all of these stores together, making up what used to be kind of one anchor. And I actually think you bring up a very important point because they're very accessible. Mm-hmm. They're both on mall, they're off mall, and the consumer service around, right, kind of getting the right foot on, right, your right kind of fit on your foot. That's really important, and that customer service aspect is really critical.
Deborah.